All right, today we're going to talk about a woman whose discoveries literally glowed in the dark, but they also ended up costing her everything. This is the incredible story of Marie Curie and, well, the price of genius. When Albert Einstein, a guy who knew a thing or two about genius, says something about you, you listen. And what he said about Marie Curie was that she was the one famous person that fame never corrupted. That one quote, it tells you so much about the kind of person we're about to get to know. She wasn't driven by glory, not at all. It was all about a relentless, pure pursuit of knowledge. So let's be clear. Marie Curie wasn't just a scientist. She was, well, a force of nature. You have to picture it. A world where science was basically a boys' club, completely closed off. And she didn't just knock on the door. She kicked it right off its hinges. Okay, just look at this list of accomplishments. It's staggering. She didn't just discover one new element, she found two. She's the one who came up with the term radioactivity for that invisible, powerful energy she was studying. And the Nobel Prizes? Oh yeah, she won two of them. Not just two, but two in completely different scientific fields. That's a feat no one else has ever managed. Ever. But, to really get who she became, this absolute giant of science, we've got to go back, all the way back to the beginning, to a young girl in Poland who had what seemed like an impossible dream. So try to imagine this. You're born with this incredible, brilliant mind, but you're told flat out, sorry, you can't go to university. Why? Simply because you're a woman. That was the actual reality for Maria Skłodowska back in Warsaw. But for her, the word no, well, that was just the start of the conversation. So what does she do? She makes this incredible pact with her sister Branya. And this wasn't just some casual promise, It was a full-on, long-term strategy built on pure sacrifice. Maria goes and works as a governess for years, putting her own dreams completely on hold, just so she can send money to her sister for medical school in Paris. All on the trust that one day, Branya would do the same for her. Just amazing. And when her turn finally came, when she made it to Paris, let me tell you, it was not glamorous, not even close. She was living in some pretty severe poverty. We're talking a cold attic room, often hungry, surviving on just bread and tea. But you know what? None of that mattered to her. The fire she had inside, that passion to learn and study at the legendary Sorbonne, it just burned so much brighter than any hardship. Then, in Paris, her life takes this massive, pivotal turn. She meets a man named Pierre Curie, and he wasn't just some colleague. He was her equal in both his brilliant mind and his passion for science. And together, they set off on a quest that was literally going to change the world. And honestly, this little story just perfectly sums them up. When they decided to get married, Marie didn't want some big white wedding dress. Nope. She asked for a dark, practical dress, one she could wear in the lab. And their honeymoon? Forget fancy trips. They got a couple of new bicycles as a wedding gift and just took off on a long tour of the French countryside. They were partners in every single sense of the word. So this partnership, it led them to what would become the central challenge of their entire careers. See, Marie had this hunch. She suspected that this mineral called pitchblende was hiding a secret, some new element that was way, way more radioactive than uranium. But how on earth do you find something that's not only undiscovered, but completely invisible? Well, it started with this. 1 ton. That's over 2,000 pounds of industrial waste. This heavy, dark rock called pitchblende. And they had to figure out how to break it all down, chemically, piece by painstaking piece. And their lab? Get this. It was basically a drafty, leaky shed. The work was just brutal, physically brutal. Maria herself said she would be broken with fatigue at the end of the day. Can you imagine? Spending your days stirring these huge boiling vats of chemicals with an iron rod that was almost as tall as she was? It was absolutely backbreaking, exhausting work. And it went on for years. So after almost 4 years of this grueling, punishing work, what did they have to show for it all? This, 0.1 grams, a tenth of a single gram of pure radium salt. That's it. A tiny, tiny pinch of glowing dust that was, believe it or not, about to change everything. Now, this incredible discovery, it shot them to the absolute pinnacle of the scientific world. They were at the top. But, as we're about to see, their greatest triumph was followed almost immediately by an absolutely unimaginable tragedy. In 1903, they got the news. I guess it would have been a telegram back then, not a phone call. They'd won the Nobel Prize in Physics. It was the ultimate validation, right? For all their hard work, for all that struggle in the shed, for their world-changing discovery. They were, without a doubt, on top of the world. And then, in just a heartbeat, everything shattered. It was only 3 years later, on a rainy Parisian street, Pierre slipped while crossing the road and was killed, instantly, by a horse-drawn carriage. Just like that. Marie's partner, her soulmate in science, the love of her life, she was gone. Faced with that kind of devastating grief, I think most people would have just crumbled. And who could blame them? But not Marie Curie. She did something else entirely. She took the mission they had started together, and she carried it forward, alone. And in the process, she managed to break even more barriers. I mean, just look at this timeline of her resilience. It's unbelievable. In 1906, just weeks after Pierre died, she takes over his teaching post at the Sorbonne, becoming the first woman ever to teach there. Then, in 1911, she wins a second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, all on her own. She goes on to found the world-famous Radium Institute. And then during World War I, what does she do? She learns how to drive, develops these mobile X-ray units, they call them Petite Curies, and drives them to the front lines herself to help save wounded soldiers. Just incredible. But there was a dark secret hiding within her life's work, within the very elements she'd brought into the light. There was a terrible, and for a long time, hidden price for all her discovery, the price of her genius. You see, back then, nobody had any idea about the dangers of radiation. I mean, nobody. So Marie worked with all these radioactive materials completely unprotected. She would literally carry test tubes filled with radioactive isotopes around in her pockets. She even kept a sample on her nightstand right by her bed just because she loved the way it glowed. She was completely mesmerized by the beauty of it. She wrote about the lovely blue-green light that these substances gave off in the dark. She was just captivated. And she had absolutely no idea at all, that this beautiful, ethereal glow was slowly, silently destroying her body from the inside out. And here's the final tragic irony. The very thing she dedicated her life to discovering was the very thing that ended up taking her life. In 1934, she died from aplastic anemia, a disease almost certainly caused by her lifetime of exposure to radiation. To give you an idea of how intense that exposure was, her notebooks from all the way back in the 1890s are still so radioactive today that you can't handle them with protective gear. They have to be stored in special lead-lined boxes. But her legacy? Oh, that's immortal. In 1995, France gave her his highest possible honor. Her remains, along with Pierre's, were moved to the Pantheon in Paris, a resting place for France's greatest heroes. And she is still the only woman entombed there purely on the merit of her own scientific work. It's the ultimate tribute to a life of just unparalleled brilliance and sacrifice. So in the end, her legacy is just undeniable. She gave us the keys to understanding the atom, which paved the way for everything from nuclear energy to life-saving cancer treatments. But she paid the ultimate price for that knowledge. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What is the true price of genius?